Okay, good morning everyone. Let's see if everything is working. Okay. Perfect. Let me check if everything is online, if everything works as it should do. So I'll click here, here, here. F. Perfect. Okay, let's wait a couple of minutes. There are two viewers right now, and then I will start discovering what to do today in AutoCAD. Okay, let's wait a few more minutes, because in the meantime I have already checked the homework is online as well into the Google Drive. So, and I open it just in case, just to see what is going to be your next simple homework to be made. But today there are a lot of things that I would like to cover. Okay. Then if you have something in here, you should see the next to your video, you should see that you can chat. It is not exactly in real time, so there is like a bit of delay from when you see things and when I say that. So I mean, it's okay. But let's start and let's discover first what. Let's understand what is the homework about first, and then we will see how many things we have to learn in AutoCAD today. So the homework at the very beginning looks like a very simple floor plan, as you can see, and we can see that I mean the floor plan, we have already made something very similar for last week to this week, but the previous drawing had something less. That is, if you notice in this drawing, you can see that elements are looking a little more well organized, and you can see that hatch has a certain color, is not as black as the one that we have seen for last week. You can notice other particular things that are not only there are dimension lines, and we will see dimensions today into the specific. You can notice another part of the drawing that makes the drawing extremely readable. That is, lines into the drawing have not same exact thickness. And you can see, for example, down here, if I zoom in, exactly, see this. If I zoom in here, you can see that this line, that is the one that technically is about a wall, is a lot thicker and a lot more visible than this line here. There is a line that is about the hole that the window leaves in the wall. Then we can see that there are dimension lines. Dimension lines instead have thickness that are not as thick as wall lines and not as thin as windows lines. So we will cover a lot of things today, like we will see how to manage line weight, and this it will introduce a concept that is a little bit wider and a little bit more important, and that is today we will talk about layers in general. So one practical use of layers will be changing line weights, but even colors, as we've seen. I'm telling you that lines into the hatch are not black, but they are grayish, and I will see that with layers we can also change colors. And last but not least, I will show you that with layers we can keep our drawing well organized. We can separate elements, but we will see today even how to create and how to manage these part of the drawing that are called dimension lines. And just in case, if you want to know where this PDF file is, you can find these if you go into the Google Drive folder. If you go into Marco AutoCAD, and then you reach the folder that is called homework number 2, this is exactly what you find inside. Take care, inside that folder there is also the homework that is for industrial students. That is about, if I remember, a bicycle or something like this, so don't use that one. The one that is for industrial students is this one that is called Plan 001 PDF, and this is also the exact drawing that you have to draw for next week. Also not today, because I haven't figured out already how to submit homeworks, but in a couple of days, let's say, you will receive instructions in how to deliver homeworks to your teacher. So not only for my class, but for all other FTA students. I'm just trying to find a way that is simple for students to be used and simple for teachers to be checked. So just wait a couple of days more in order to start asking me something like how to deliver homeworks and stuff like this. But for now, you don't need to send me anything by mail. You don't need at all for now. Then I will see if I find a clever solution in order to solve this annoying issue. Anyway, let's start by going in our beautiful AutoCAD software, and let's see first part of this class that will be about layers. What we need to know about layers is that, first of all, what layer means. That is very simple. That is this. When you draw and you have and you use pencils and you use markers, you need to know that you are not only able to draw into white paper, you can also draw into transparent paper. Why this? Basically, if you imagine that you have a sheet that is transparent and you draw certain things on that, then on top of that you can put another transparent sheets so that you can draw other informations on that additional surface. And at the end, your drawing will be created by looking at all shapes that you have drawn on this transparent layers. And this concept that basically was already used when there were not even the PC to draw. I mean, people used to draw on transparent paper, but this is translated into the digital tool that we use, that is AutoCAD, into the concept that is layers. Layers are extremely interesting to be used, but what is slightly annoying is that in Windows for AutoCAD, layers are in AutoCAD for Windows, layers are immediately visible and they are here. They are using this part of the toolbar. If you have Mac, and I still don't understand why, but anyway, but if you have a Mac, you will find layers in a toolbar that should appear on your left side, on your right side of the screen, that is here. Okay? If for whatever reason in Mac or in Windows you are not able to see layers in general, you can find layers by using this keyboard shortcut, that is, you type on your keyboard LA, you type LA, and then you press enter. And you should see this floating window appearing, or something that more or less, if you have a Mac, it looks pretty similar to this. Okay? What we can see in this dialog box? In here, we can see that we already draw on a layer, and in here we can see that there is already a layer and its name is simply layer 0. Layer 0 is in all AutoCAD drawings is a layer that you can't delete and each DWG file, so each AutoCAD file, starts by having at least this layer. Layers can be created and you can name them as you want, but let's start by understanding which are symbols that we find next to each layer. And you will notice again a slightly, small difference in between Windows and Mac, simply because if you have Windows, you have the name of your layer, and next to it you can find, I'm just stretching these columns, but you can find all properties of your layers on the right of the name. If you have Mac, if I remember, some of these options are on the left of the name, and other of the other options are placed like here on the right of the name. The way that they work is exactly the same. It doesn't really change anything. The basic concept behind the layer is just how the interface looks like. But let's see first this. We have the possibility, exactly, just make everything a little bit larger, not anything different. But first of all, we need to see this. This is the name of the layer. Then, next to the name of one layer only, we will find that there is a check sign. What that means is that is the active layer. So it means that it is that transparent invisible level, like plane, that is where we are actually drawing our shapes. When I will show you in a few minutes how you can add more layers, we will see that we will be able to set which layer we want to use, and we will be able to choose the list from the list of our layers which one we want to set as an active layer. But then let's see which other important things we need to know about layers that are these. Next to the name of the layer, and again, if I'm right into the Mac, this will have just a different symbol. That is, if you have Windows, next to the name you see the symbol of a lamp, and that means that the layer is on, or technically if the layer is visible. When the lamp, if you have a Mac, I think it's like this. If you have a Mac, you should see instead of a lamp the symbol of a eye, but the meaning is the same. And what this symbol means is that if the eye is visible, or in this case, if the lamp is yellow, it means that the layer is on, and all shapes that we have drawn in that particular layer are visible as well. Next to it, there is an option that we won't use right now, because this will be interesting when I will explain how to print from AUTOCAD, and that would be how to freeze a layer. Freezing a layer means that you can see it when you draw it, but then you won't see it when you print it. And then instead there's another thing that is, and so we will see freeze when I will go in depth into printing from AUTOCAD. Then instead there is something extremely important, that is lock. Lock allows you to have drawings that can be modified. So you draw certain shapes, and then if you want to avoid deleting them by mistake, modifying them by mistake, moving them by mistake, you can lock a layer. You will see what is in that layer. You will be able to print what is in that layer, but you won't be able to modify what's in that layer. Next, there is another option that is called plot. What it means? It's very simple. Again, when we are going to print things, we will discover that certain layers can be made just as reference, or certain layers can include maybe just comments that we want to add in our project, but maybe we don't need to print those informations. So if we check or not the property that is called plot, we will be able to choose if that layer is going to be printed or not. What we have next to plot? Now things are start by becoming a lot more interesting, and we have a property of a layer that is extremely important, that is the color of the layer. Color of the layer can be changed in whatever way we want, but why we should do something like this in AutoCAD? First of all, we need to know that when we are going to print our drawings, we will mainly print them in black and white. So this color, this property called color, is not related to how we are going to print the drawing. But the color of a layer allows us to clearly understand in which layer our shapes have been placed. If I make multiple layers and I keep all of them white, then I will never know if an object is into a layer called 0, or if an object is into another layer that is called maybe walls or furniture or dimensions, and so on and so on. So layer is only a property of a layer that allows you to understand if your object is correctly placed into a layer or not. Then I will show you just last two properties that we need to really learn, that are extremely important. There are one property is called line type, another one is called the line weight. There is this one, there is just make it bigger. Line type by default, whenever you use AutoCAD for the first time, line type is always set as continuous. What continuous means? Continuous means that when you draw, you have that the look of your line is a continuous line. And just to make an example, let me draw this. I mean, this, if I pretending that I'm drawing, wait a second, I want to draw something into the screen, so give me 3 seconds, exactly, I need this tool here, perfect. So this means a continuous line. In technical drawing, for multiple reasons, sometimes we need to draw elements that have other line type. So for example, one day I will show you, sometimes we need to draw lines that are like these, and these are called dashed lines. Sometimes, again, for other reasons, we will draw dash dot lines. In all these three examples, we won't really draw a line from here to here or from here to here and then stop and here to here. Absolutely not. In all these three examples, we are drawing lines from here to there, from here to there, from here to there. The only thing that is really changing is we are able to change line type, so the look of our shape. And this is exactly what this property is about. If we click continuous, we will have that AutoCAD will ask if we want to use other line types. So where's the trick? The trick is that at the very beginning, when we use AutoCAD for the first time, we have not as many line type as available. So we click where we see continuous and we get a dialog box that is pretty similar to this. And then, if we want to use more line types in our file, we have first to click load, and we will load just third that is dashed, and we click OK. We click load, and we click the fourth type, that is the one that is dash dot, and we click OK. Now I will be able, when I click line type, to switch from one line type to another. So I can make a layer where all my shapes will look dashed. I can make a layer where all my shapes will look dash dotted, or I will make a layer where I will use continuous line. But this is what line type is about. Don't worry, because when I will show you, probably next week, when I will show you how to draw projections, I will repeat again how to use line types, and into the specific case, how to use dashed line type. We will see instead, when we will talk about sections, how to use that line type that is called dash dot. So, last property that we need to know instead is this one, that is called line weight. And this is one of those elements that I showed you at the beginning in our homework, that is, if you remember, this one, where I showed you that there are lines that are thick, lines that are thinner, lines that are with a medium thickness, not as thick, not as thin. So this is exactly where we can set that elements drawn in a layer will have a certain thickness. Thickness for in AutoCAD is called line weight, and by clicking line weight instead of default, we can set that our lines will be thin or thicker. This is an option that is mainly useful again in order to print objects from AutoCAD, even if I will show you that you can also check line weight directly at screen, but we'll see this more or less at the end. So, before closing layers and before using them into an actual drawing, let me show you at least this button here that is called New Layer. Again, if you have a Mac, take care, because when you are using layers, the button to make a new layer, instead of being placed above the list of your layers, if I remember, it is a tiny button that is placed below the list of your layers. But this again is only if you still have a Mac and you haven't thrown it yet. So let's see this. First of all, we can make new layers, so in both AutoCAD and Mac. And when we click layers and we make new one, we just create another voice in this menu. When we create our new layer also, the name of the layer is first thing that is editable. So we are immediately able to give our layer a more specific name. Why this is important? Because in our homework we have lines that have completely different meanings. There are lines that are for walls, there are lines that are for windows, there are dimension lines, and there are elements of the drawing where we have placed hatch. So at least we need to create a separate layer for each of these categories. So I will start by making my layers with a more specific name, not just layer 1, but I will make my first layer and I will call it wall or walls. Then I make a new layer. And for example, here I will put those lines that are for windows. So I will call these windows. And then we said we have other two more categories. We have dimensions and hatch. So why not? I make another layer and I will call it dimensions. Why not? Last but not least, I will create a layer that is called hatch. If we look at the list of all other of all our layers, we can see that right now they are sharing exactly same properties. So we can check, for example, that all our layers are turned on, all our layers, but forget these are not frozen, but all our layers are not locked, all of them can be printed, all of them are sharing same color, that is white, all of them are using continuous line type, and all of them are made with a line weight that is called default. That means they have no line weight. All lines in these layers will be perfectly thin, no matter how you zoom in or how you zoom out. But we can also see now better that next to one only layer there is this green check sign. So what happens is this. Look, first of all, I don't even need to close layer dialog box. I can just keep it here for now. And I will start drawing something. But because a green check sign is placed next to my 0 layer, what this means is this. Look, if I draw this shape, this is a shape, and then I press escape, that has been drawn on the layer that is called 0. So if I hide it, if I lock it, if I change the color, if I make it printable or not, and so on and so on, whatever I change into my layer will affect this all shapes here. But I can do something more, that is, before changing properties of my layers, I can make another layer as a active one. So what I will do is simply, I will select a layer and then I double click in this area. By double clicking in this area, I will see that the green check sign has been moved next to wall layer. So, see this. I will draw something else. I will draw this shape. Okay? And also, I did it on purpose, similar to the previous one, because which is my main problem now? My main problem is that if I keep colors of layers exactly the same, I will never ever understand if I'm drawing elements into the right layer or not. You can see that from the properties of my layers, my two layers one is called 0 here, and the one that is called walls, they are both white. So my two shapes are both white as well. So see, first of all, why it's important to understand that we can change layers in layer colors in AutoCAD. Simply because if I change now the color of my layer, and for example, I click that colored square, and I change the color from white, let's say, to green, and then I click OK, what happens is that I will immediately see that shapes that are drawn on the walls layer are changing their color. But again, they are changing the color into the screen. It's not that when I will print my walls in green and I will print other elements in white also, because this is white. Absolutely not. But at least by changing the color of a layer at screen, I will be 100% sure that green is the color of walls. These objects are into the layer that is wall. Sorry. And I can do these for all other layers. So look, and I can do these before or after drawing things into the layer. So I can make my Windows layer yellow. I can make my dimensions layer red. I can make my hatch layer, I don't know, magenta, this one. Okay? First of all, there is no fixed color that you should use for a certain layer. What it means? I am using randomly green for walls, yellow for windows, red for dimensions, and magenta for hatch. If you want, you can use pink, blue, purple, orange, yellow. You can use whatever color you want. For this particular aspect of AutoCAD, there is not like a right or wrong way to apply colors. You just need to use colors in a way that you can easily see differences and in a color scheme that for you makes sense, so that allows you to quickly understand if an object is into a layer or not. But then, see this, even if I've changed the colors before, if I now double click next to Windows layer and I draw something, check that Windows color is yellow, I will see that my circles are yellow. If I double click into dimensions, I will see instead, this I don't like it, okay. But I can see that shapes will be automatically red. So I don't have to guess if they are or not into dimensions layer, because their color matches the property that I gave to the layer. So I know that these last 3 circles are into layer. My previous 3 circles are into windows. My green lines are into walls. My first lines are into 0. Same thing for hatch. Just double click. Whatever I draw in this layer will be magenta, because the layer itself is magenta. But let's see at least first two starting properties of the layer that are making the layer visible or not, and then making the layer locked or not. So look, if I need, for whatever reason, to make informations that were into the 0 layer disappearing from my drawing, but I don't want to delete them, because probably I will use them in a second time, I will use them afterward, and so on and so on. What I can do is I can select the symbol that is next to the layer, and if I click, so if I left click on it, I will see that the lamp from yellow becomes blue, and what this means is that now that particular layer is hidden. When a layer is hidden, of course, because I can see anything that is drawn there, and I can't also select elements that are in my hidden layer. My layer can be also modified. I mean, it's not visible, it's not printable, and I can't modify it. Then, let's keep freeze because it makes no sense. What is instead lock? Lock is a property that allows you to, when you click it, make the layer visible, printable, but not editable. So a layer that is locked is a layer where that I can use as reference. So I can still snap things over locked elements. This is not a limit. So I can use elements drawn in my locked layers. But if I try to make adjustments, like I try to select locked objects, move them or delete them or edit them in general, I will see that when I move, even when I move my mouse over a locked layer, a shape that is on a locked layer, the mouse will show me locking symbol. So this is the first warning that says, you can do really a lot with these, but even if I try, I mean, I try to select, and they look like they are selected, but then I hit delete on my keyboard, nothing, zero. Locked layers contains objects that can be deleted, can be moved, can be changed. I mean, they remain there. And especially in interior design, I will show you that this feature is extremely important because you will use it in all those parts of your project that you want to be sure remain the same. Into the case of our homework, imagine this. Imagine you make a mistake and you want to move dimension lines from another one because they were overlapping each other or other issues like this. For sure, into an architectural drawing, you don't want your walls to be changed in an accidental way. So, this is pretty common. In general, once that you draw your walls, then operation that you have to do immediately after drawing them should be that you lock the layer that contains walls. So if you need to select the furniture, if you need to add dimension lines and other things like that, you will never have the problem that is you may change your walls accidentally. And this is why we have lock in here. So we have seen on and off. We have seen unlock, lock. We have seen the color as a property of a layer. I should change, I should show you how changing the line type, right now it's not super useful for the homework, but we can see that if we have made something, and then we change the line type in our layer, let's say we make it dashed, and we click OK, at the very beginning, it looks like nothing is happening. And even if we have these objects onto the zero layer, it looks like they are not changing. In reality, what happens is that when you draw with AutoCAD, you shouldn't just make doodles on the screen, but you should use more precise dimensions. So if I zoom in, I will see that this looks like a continuous line, but this happens only because probably my drawing is extremely small. While if I make a line, but sorry, we said 0 layer, so I double click here, and if I make a line that is a way longer, I can see that in reality elements drawn on my 0 layer are not more appearing with continuous line, but because I've selected dashed, they are dashed. Or I can go to Window, change your line type to dash dot, and again, if I draw, I will see that I correctly draw from the start to the end of my line, but my line won't be continuous. It will have dash dotted lines. Last property of a layer that is a little bit tricky, not to be used but to be checked, is the property that is called line weight. And why this? Simply because, look, by default, even if I start changing all my line weights, so I make something very thin, then I make something, sorry, line weight here. We make something like 0.3. We make something like, line weight 8, so something super thick. You can see that even if I'm changing everything into line weight of my object is not changing at all. And this is simply because by default, and only by default, line weight will be visible only when you print. And this can be something pretty annoying because you want to be sure that all of your line weights are correctly working. So, only for this reason, you need to use a button that is in this lower area of the screen. Also, right now, there is a button that is covered by my face that I want to show you. So, for a second, don't get dizzy, don't be mad, but I have to move my face from here. So give me a second, I will do, I will place myself in here for a second. Let's see if it works. See if I can quickly change my face position. Whoa, it works, I'm the best, I know. So, see this. I need to show you this button into the interface, this one. This very last button on the right of your interface. Why this? Because in here there are a lot of already visible tools, but that one that I want to show you is not there by default. So we need to click here. There is a tiny button called Customization. And from the list of options that appear here, there is one option that is called line weight, that is here. Okay? You can also see that next to line weight there is not a check sign. So we will instead left click and we will add a new button in our lower toolbar. If you see, look, let's see if I can make something magical. That is, put your attention here to this area of the software. When I add a check sign next to line weight, you can see this button appearing. But look, just to show you, before, when this wasn't enabled, it was like this, my interface. They were just a small triangle. Instead, I click line weight and I add this button to my interface. Remember, this step must be done once in AutoCAD. And next time that you will reopen AutoCAD, this tiny button will be automatically there. So it's not something that you have to do file by file or each time that you open AutoCAD. Absolutely not. So, what this button does? This button by default is gray. And if a button is gray, it means that its feature, its function, I would say, is actually disabled. Having line weight disabled means that even if we have changed line weights into our drawing, we don't see any difference. Okay? Then see the magic, because if I have changed line weight in my layers and I want to check that layers have different line weight, I can simply click with the left button this option, and this will be turned on, and when it is turned on it is in blue. But now I can see that my purple layer that I have just randomly selected to be 0.8 is showing me a pretty thick visible line weight. Then I have something that is my yellow layer that has a line weight that is 0.3, so you can see that circle that has this layer are not as thin as other elements, but also not as thick as my purple layer. And then last one, that is the zero layer, that is white. I just put 0.09, so extremely thin, and you can see that this is remaining thin. Okay? If I change line weight now, I can see, and I click OK, that line weight will be visible immediately. And this is happening only because this tiny button that I have placed in my interface, that is called the line weight display, this has been enabled. With this gray, even if I have all my different line weights, believe it or not, I will never see line weights at screen. Take care, this is at screen. Because even if I'm not using line weight at screen, when I will print my drawing, in that case my drawing will be printed with different line weights. Okay? I mean, yes, if you have. First of all, before I move on, if you have questions, check that you can use the chat button next to the video. Of course, questions can be like, Marco, can I show you my AutoCAD because it is not working? Because of course I won't be able to see your desktop, your screen. But if you have questions, I mean, chat, and you will see when you write, and then when I answer, something like 20 seconds of delay, but that is meant to be like this. Anyway, if we have no questions, I want to show you one slightly more correct way to make these layers, that is this. You can see in my drawing that line weight and line thickness is not randomly applied to elements of the drawing. But in general, not in general, but it works like this instead. There is lines that are walls into the drawing, into a technical drawing, must be made with thicker line weight. All other elements in your drawing must have, in a gradual way, but they all must have thinner line weights. So walls are always thickest. And this is what I'm going to do here. Because starting from my walls, let's say I will correctly give them something that I can remember, like 0.8. So pretty thick lines. Windows are important, but not as important as walls. So I will make them, first of all, continuous. But also I will change thickness for my windows so that it will be even less than half of my walls, and actually it was already set because it's, 0.3 is fine. Dimensions are slightly thicker than windows, slightly thinner than walls. So for example, I can make 0.4. Last but not least, you can see that in my drawing, hatch is extremely thin. So for hatch, I will use a very thin line weight, let's say even 0.05, something that would be like hair thickness. And now I can use my layers in order to make a more realistic drawing. So what I will do is I will draw something that will look like a house. Also because after drawing the house, I will explain dimension lines, how to use them, but especially how to manage them. That is what makes them slightly complex. So I will draw this. I will make my lines. Let's say I'm correctly using millimeters, so I will make this wall like 500, and then I zoom out. I will make the wall 150 millimeters thick. I will make this wall 350, and then I will continue. I will make this wall 600, and then this other piece of the wall 100, and then 100 again. But if you notice, I am repeating several times that I'm doing a wall, but you may notice that I have made a terrible mistake. That is, I had Windows layer as active layer, but I have drawn shapes, and then I will close it. I'm drawing shapes that for me are walls. So we need to discover another interesting part of AutoCAD, that is layers. Once that you have created them, they can be used not only into the right way from the beginning. So not only you set your active layer and then you draw on that layer, but if you make a mistake, or if you simply change your mind and you want just to put elements from one layer to another, you can even do this. So I've made the mistake on purpose, not that bad in AutoCAD. I have made the mistake, that is, I have used line and I have drawn walls while I was using windows as a active layer. But what I can do is also this, look, and I will close layer, no, sorry, close layers, because we don't need them. Can you see this menu here? If you have Windows, the menu is here. If you have Mac instead, in this lower part of the interface, so technically below layers, you should find something that is called properties if you have a Mac. But why? Simply because in the two systems, if you select something that has been drawn in a certain layer, you will read in which layer your elements have been drawn in a menu that is like this. It is a menu that has multiple options. So in Windows is here. If you have a Mac, is over here into the right side. But they work the same, because if you click the name of the layer, that is where my lines are drawn right now, what I can do is I select them, I open the menu that shows me all my layers, and I will simply select walls. So what I've done is, in reality, I have changed properties of those walls. They had a property that was they were drawn into Windows layer, but I've selected them and I change that property into walls. So now they will follow rules, colors, and whatever else I need them to do for that is properties taken from walls layer. So now I can really draw window. Let's say I make it 800. I make it 800. Perfect. Then, again, just to repeat, I make another mistake because I continue my wall, but again, I haven't noticed that I am working on Windows layer. So just to repeat, I don't want to change these two lines because they are the only two lines that are correct. I want to change all of these. So I will select them. I go to the property that is the layer property, and I move these into the walls layer. And now, let's escape. But now my drawing will be correct. So I can as well select layers from the beginning, or I can change layers afterward. For example, I will do last mistake. That is, I put hatch in here, but I just change the scale and make it bigger, cause even more. Let's see, exactly. But again, maybe 200, exactly, and then okay. You can see that this hatch is in yellow. So it is yellow because by mistake, again, I was using Windows layer. But again, I can select the hatch and I go to my Home tab and I move the hatch from Windows to hatch layer, and it will acquire the right color, right line weight, right everything that I have set into my hatch layer. Then let's see why layers are interesting. Simply because, and we will open again layer dialog box. So we will again type L A, that is the keyboard shortcut for layers. Enter. First of all, let me check if line weights are correct, because we have set 0.4 for Windows, 0.8, 0.3 for Windows, 0.4 is for dimension, 0.05 for hatch, 0.8 for walls. If I turn on visible line weight, I should see something very, very beautiful that is like this. I can see that my walls are extremely thick looking. Windows, not that thick, but for sure they are thicker than hatch. That is the element of my drawing that is using the thin line weight, that is thinner available line weight that I have selected. And this is correct. But another thing that I can do when I use layers is this. Let's imagine that your teacher doesn't like hatch for his homework. So what you can do is, instead of deleting it, instead of removing, you can simply go to layer properties. Next to hatch, you see the lamp, and if you click the lamp, boom, hatch is hidden now, and no one will see it. You can't see it, you can't print it, you can't edit something that you can even select. But you can do something more, that is this. Imagine that you need to add stuff. Let's say you want to put a bed in here, but then you want to move it or you want to rotate it. What happens is that you don't want to select walls by mistake. So for example, walls is a layer that can be locked. When a layer is locked, layer is visible. It's just a little bit darker than its original color, but yet visible. The objects into that layer can be seen, they can be printed, they can't be edited. But for example, I can use them in order to snap other elements. So I can still snap things from my wall corners or in general object snapping points. But if I try, look, if I try by selecting them and delete them, you will see that elements that are not into the locked layer can be deleted. But elements that are into my locked layer can't be deleted at all. And if I want to be sure, I can read here into the screen, and let me highlight it. I can read here that I've tried to delete elements, but AutoCAD says that 8 objects were on a locked layer, so you are not able to delete them. And then when I need instead, I can just unlock and I can start edit whatever I need. Okay? Basically, this is how layers work. The more complex projects you are going to have, the more layers you are going to create inside your project. And we will see also one of these days that is possible to make one empty file that already contains all of our layers, and we can use that to start our new projects instead of keep creating layers each time that we make a new drawing. But we will see this maybe next week. So let me show you last thing for today. That is how to use dimension lines. And I will go to right layer and then I will use dimensions. First of all, where are dimensions? Dimensions are in our annotation toolbar. If you have Mac, dimensions are where dimensions are, so don't ask me because I don't remember honestly, but they should be close to your modify tools, I hope. I don't know, it's okay. And how dimension works is this. First of all, you can see that there are more than one dimension tool, and we will click not this super big one. Don't use these. You have to use this small one, and next to it there is a triangle. If you use a Mac, you should press and hold left button, but if you click here you will discover that there are multiple available dimension lines. We use in general two of them. We will mainly use only the line dimension line that is called linear and the dimension line that is called aligned. Which is the difference? The difference is this. When I click linear dimension, no matter which point I select, and because with dimension I will simply write the distance between 2 points, and it works like this. Look, you click linear dimension, then you click first point, that is from where you want to measure, and then you click your second point. What is interesting is this: even if our selected points are not horizontally or vertically aligned, when we use linear dimension, we will always, and then we make a third click to place our dimension line, but don't worry right now about what you see, but we will make the horizontal or the vertical dimension. So again, look, I select on purpose this corner and this corner that more or less have an angle that is 45 degrees, but because I'm using linear dimension, even if I click these angled points, with linear dimension I will know horizontal, or if I move my mouse away, vertical distance between these 2 points. And I left click to place my dimension line. But if, for whatever reason, I need to know angled dimension, so I really need to measure the actual distance that there is between these 2 points in diagonal, in that case I will use aligned dimension. Aligned dimension instead measures the real distance between 2 points that I select, no matter which is the angle in between. So if I click these and that, there are angled points. These will give me the information about the real distance between those 2 corners inside the the window space. Okay? Ready? Yes? See? All right. Let's see one very small but important thing that you can do. That is this. Technically, it looks like by using dimensions, I'm just creating perfect. And I'm just making lines, but in my drawing, I can see also numbers next to the okay. I was saying, on top of my lines, you can see the number, while in AutoCAD it looks like I'm just doing lines. So look, technically, if I zoom in, I have to zoom in a lot. In reality, even here, there is the number that shows me the distance in between. The problem is that this number is using a font, so the text size, it is too small. And according to units and dimensions of my project, this text size is too small and I can't read it from this point of view. So using dimensions is not difficult in terms of how to use the dimension tool, because dimension tool is just click from where, click tilde where, and then just make a third click to set where your dimension line will be placed. So technically it's not that hard as a tool to be used. What is complex instead is that dimensions have certain symbols and certain behaviors that are managed by a parameter in AutoCAD that is called the dimension style. So what we need to change now, and this will be last thing for today, is we need to understand how to modify the dimension style to make our dimensions more visible. Dimension style is something that can be found in different ways. If you have a Mac, if you have Windows, if you use a certain interface, and so on and so on. But in general, no matter which AutoCAD you are using right now, if you start typing D, and that's it, and you don't type anything else, so just letter D, you will notice that first tool that AutoCAD will suggest is called DIM style. That means dimension style. So I simply press D and then enter, and I will activate this dialog box that shows me what is called the Dimension Style Manager. Okay? So, what I have to do now is this. I can see that I am using a dimension style that in my case is called standard. If you find a name that is different, so if you, for whatever reason, you find something that is called ISO 25, for example, it doesn't matter. Just be sure that this is selected and then click modify. But if you have a Mac, you won't find immediately modify button, but you select standard, and I think down here, if you have a Mac, there is a symbol of a gear. So let me pretend that I have a Mac. If you have a Mac, down here you should see something like this. And then like that. It's less horrible than this. But if you have a Mac, you have to click this gear and then you will find modify. Because if not, you will never find this button. But again, if you click Windows or Mac and then you find modify, then this dialog box will be the same. It will be exactly the same. In here, there are few things that we need to change. A few of them, but really important. We need to make, look, this is current dimension style. But we need to change these parameters so that at the end of this operation, our dimensions will look like this, like the one that we have in our homework. Exactly like this. And you will notice that there are a few things that are different. You know, we have to change the style of the head and the end. We need to make the text size bigger. We need also to remove these elements that are in AutoCAD right now. They are called extension lines. So let's see these 3 simple steps that we need to do. Look, we need to, when we modify the dimension style, we need to go in this area where we see lines, and we need to check that we want to suppress extension line 1 and extension line 2. And you immediately see into the preview of your dialog box that you have removed those annoying perpendicular lines from your dimension lines. Second step, we need to go into the menu that is called symbols and arrows. We have seen that in our homework we have not those arrows that are like pointy arrows, but we have angled thick lines. So to make this happening, we go to symbols and arrows, and we change these parameters called arrowheads from whatever it is to the one that is called architectural thick. And we have almost done. We will go back in symbols and arrows in a second. But last thing that we need to solve, that technically was also the one that is more important, was that the text wasn't readable because its size was too small. So we have to go in our third menu, the one that is called text, and in here we find a parameter that is called text height. And we can read that this number right now is 0.18. Okay? Why this is important? This is important because text size and the symbol and arrow size should be at least match, but even if they are not matching, they shouldn't be extremely different. What it means? Look, if I go to text, this is 0.18. If I go to symbol and arrows, even the arrow size is 0.18. So what it means is that if I change the text and I make it, I don't know, 40, I need to be sure that I go to symbol and arrows, and I also change this to be 40. If not, I will have a symbol that will be completely out of scale. So I will have a symbol with a huge text and small arrows. Or maybe I should have the opposite, that I have a symbol that has huge arrows and a very tiny text. So in general, these two numbers should match. Just to remember one easy rule to follow, but in reality what is important is that they are very close to each other. So I can even, and it will be fine, I can make my text 50 and the symbol 30, but not 50 and 1 or 50 and 300. Some values there are more or less in a similar range. This is the real rule. Then there are a few more things that we can do, and especially we need to do this. We need to understand, and this will be last adjustment that we have to do in our dimension style, we need to adjust the precision. What it means? According to the unit that we are using, we need to use more or less decimal numbers after the comma. This is pretty simple to remember, and it will work like this. If we use meters, because we need to be sure that we measure till 1 millimeter of precision, if we use meters, precision level should be 3 values after the comma, so that a number that is 1.123 means that it will be 1 meter, 12 centimeters, 3 millimeters. But if we use centimeters, a number like 5.1 will mean 5 centimeters, 1 millimeter. So if we use centimeters, level of precision will be 1 decimal value after the comma. But if we are drawing already in millimeters, and in architecture we will never go in a detail that is smaller than a millimeter, so we have no tools that allows us to draw to measure rooms or houses with the precision of a fraction of a millimeters. If we use millimeters, this value must be 0. So no decimal values after the comma. Okay? And I was using millimeters. So let's see if everything is fine, because we can see that behind this menu our dimension lines are still looking as they were before. So we need simply to confirm by pressing OK that we are happy with adjustments that we have made in our dimension style. So I click OK. This is updated, the preview, not the drawing. So I close my dimension style manager, and if I'm right, and I hope so, boom! I mean, I knew that I was right. But now my dimensions are extremely visible and correctly readable. Okay? So, this is exactly how you should manipulate the dimension style in your drawing that you have to do for your homework number 2. You have to find the right text height, right arrow size. You have to remove the extension lines. You will see that, for example, my text is slightly bigger than arrows, but I mean, there is not a value that you must follow, but just make the text slightly bigger than arrows. And for example, you can notice that the hatch is gray. How to do it? That would be simple. That is, you select gray or whatever other color, not whatever, you have to make gray into layer that is the hatch, and so on and so on. So, believe it or not, just by, yes, let's zoom out, just by knowing these informations, that is, how to use dimension style and how to use dimension lines, you will be able to make this homework. There is only one last thing that I want to show you in two-dimension lines. There is nothing that is related to AutoCAD, but is more a general rule to follow. That is, look here. I want to show you this part. In here, and forget about these lines also, because today I don't want to show you how to make this symbol, so just don't do it. But see this. Can you see here you have this dimension that is 190. You have this dimension that is 120. You have this dimension that is 190. Then you have this overall dimension that is 500. What you have to know is this. When in AutoCAD, and in general I will say, when in architectural drawing you add multiple dimension lines, you need to draw them in a specific order, that is. And then, so, oh, wait, question, wait. How can we open dimension style menu? Instead of using the keyboard shortcut D. So, look, if we are not using the keyboard shortcut, you will notice that here there is not anything that says dimension style. So if you are not using the keyboard shortcut that is D, the thing becomes a little bit more annoying, because you should go, first of all, let me see if we have it, that is here, probably manage, no, press 2, parametric view, no, it's not here. You should do this very annoying thing that is, and this works only for AutoCAD. You should click this little triangular button up here. Then you should click show menu bar, so that you add an additional row of available tools in your AutoCAD interface. And after doing this, you can go to Format, and then yes, you can find another way to use dimension styles. So now that you know two ways to find dimension style, feel free to choose the one that's easier. One is by going here, going there, going here. Another one is just press D, enter. So choose the one that for you it's easier. In both cases, you will reach this part of AutoCAD. So Let me finish the thing that I was telling you about where to place dimensions. There are these. If you see in this wall, there are certain elements that I can measure. So I'm technically free to give this dimension, so from this corner to this, but also this one, and so on and so on. But I can also give the overall dimension that goes from extreme left to extreme right of my drawing. But if I add both the informations, I just need to follow this simple rule that is, smaller dimensions must be closer to the object that I measure. Bigger dimension will be further from the object that I measure. So it means this is right way to make dimensions. Look, I measure from here to here, then I measure from here to here, and also I snap this dimension here because these two sides are parallel to each other, so my dimensions are parallel to each other, and I align them on the same distance. So then I measure from here to here, and I align this here. Then don't mind about the overlap because probably the font is just too big. But then I continue. I measure from here to there, and I snap it here, and I have almost done. I measure from here to there, boom, almost done. From here to here, there, here to here, there, boom. So these are all my smaller dimensions. If I want also to include the one that measures the entire wall, so I click from this corner to this corner, I will move this dimension further from the wall. There are common mistakes that we'll check with practice that are this dimension must stay here, slightly further from the wall. It would be wrong to place the dimension in here. So if I delete it and I redo it, it would be wrong to place this overall dimension here. This is wrong order of placing dimensions. This is terribly wrong. Also, for walls, you need to place the dimension on the same side that the face of the wall is looking at. What it means? It means this. If I measure this wall, face of the wall is looking down, so this dimension must stay here. It has to be down. It will be 100% wrong to do dimensions like this. Look, you measure inner wall, so the face that is looking down, but then you make your last click and you place your dimension out here. This, look, let's see if I can make this. This dimension is wrong. This dimension is placed into the right spot, into the right place. Okay? So, if I use multiple dimensions again, smaller dimensions will stay closer to the object. So, if I add this, it will be here. that measures from this corner to this corner. If I measure this one, it has to stay, again, even slightly further. If I measure the overall, again, it has to be always, 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 always further. So I need to create this kind of precise order in placing dimension lines. The smaller is the detail that I measure, the closer the dimension will be to the object. The bigger is the dimension, the further my dimension line will be placed. But in any case, all dimensions should be placed according to where is the face of the object that you are measuring. Not only in horizontal alignment, but even if I'm measuring something vertical. So if I measure this wall, location of this dimension must be here. If I measure this wall, the line must be there, not outside. Even if dimensions will be overlapping each other, that is not a problem. In general, this happens maybe just because font is a little bit too big, but I'm making it big just to be more readable. But these are those few things that you need to know in terms of placing dimension lines into the right way. So this is last thing that I want to show you today. I will wait a couple minutes if someone has a question. If you go to the Google Drive instead, you will immediately find that you already have the folder that is the homework 2 that contains exactly this PDF file, this one, okay, and what else? If you have questions, do them in these 5 seconds or next week. I will answer a question that nobody has already made. That is, how about delivering homeworks? For now, don't worry about how to deliver homeworks. I'm trying to find a solution that is interesting and that is reliable for all teachers. So I'm trying to find a way to give all of you the possibility to upload homeworks somewhere, like a Dropbox, like a Google somewhere. I need to figure it out yet. But for sure, don't send homeworks by mail, because I mean, at least for me, if other teachers will ask you to send them by mail, do what other teachers will ask you, but for sure don't send mail to me, because for me that becomes extremely confusing, having 3,000 emails and then finding the right conversation and finding the file. Absolutely not. So for me, wait a couple of days, then I will send a message to the FDA secretary where I will explain which solution I found in order to deliver homework. Okay? Is it clear? Yes? See? Perfect. So let me wait. And I was saying this because I was waiting someone to make me question. I can see that there are no questions in chat. So for now, this is it. Make your homework, and in a couple of days I will tell you how to upload it. Mindful Music Incorporated says, you have preferred line weights for walls, windows for this homework. not that I have, but in general, you need to follow a very simple rule that is your line weights should be always divided by 2 when you start from thicker to thinner. What it means? Let's say you make these 0.8. If this is 0.8, these will be 0.4, these will be 0.2, and thinner lines, that is H, will be 0.1. So it is always divided by 2. If you make these like 1 millimeter, this will be 1, this 0.5, this 0.25, this 0.12, and so on and so on. So just as a good rule, you need to start from thicker and divide all of your line weights by 2, or the opposite, starting from, thicker, yes, or starting from the thinner and multiply them by 2. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.8, or 0.2, 0.4, 0.8, 1.6, stuff like that. Is that clear? I hope the answer is yes. Perfect! This is everything for today. So, lovely. Remember, like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Ciao.